Financial problems are familiar to many. These are the problems that you don't really want to deal with, but, alas, you have to, because most people in this world periodically face a lack of funds. Anything can happen in life. Someone can lose their job, someone their business, someone has too many debts that they can't pay off. In general, money is money. There are always a lot of problems with it. But problems are needed to be solved, and in this article, we will learn how to solve financial problems so that they do not prevent you from enjoying life. In general, friends, you need to love problems, including financial ones. Just imagine how you would live if there were no problems in your life. You would simply become hard as a cracker. But when you encounter difficulties in your life, you at least keep yourself in shape, you are vigilant, you strain your brains, you act, and along with all these things, you live. So problems are a very useful thing, and your problems with money, temporary, of course, are a good reason to understand this issue, the issue of money. After all, how much useful information you can learn on my site, which is nowhere else on the internet, what opportunities you will have after this, if you use my knowledge, which I kindly share with you. This is such a blessing for you. And all thanks to what? Thanks to what are you here? And it was precisely thanks to certain problems of yours. It was your problems that became the reason for our acquaintance. And I am glad to meet you. And you? Well, okay, I won't drag it out and we'll move on to solving financial problems, because, after all, that's what you came here for. Let's start with understanding where any problems, including financial ones, come from. Every person in their life is engaged in some kind of activity that provides them with a certain amount of money. If this type of activity brings a good income to a person, they are basically happy with their life and their business. But if at one fine moment they have problems with money, it means that they started doing something wrong, not the way they should. It means that they started making mistakes in something, and therefore their activity stopped bringing them good income, or their expenses increased, over which they lost control, or something else went wrong. In general, there was a failure, mistakes started, something stopped working as it should, and chaos began. And chaos in our case is the lack of control over most of the vital processes, among which the process of money management is of particular importance. Therefore, when you have financial problems in your life, it is quite obvious that something in it has gone beyond your control. If at all, this something was ever under your control. And what can go beyond your control and thus create serious problems for you? First of all, it is you yourself. When a person loses control over himself, then the most serious problems appear in his life, which, in fact, have always been there, they just did not make themselves known, because the person easily dealt with them. But as soon as his immunity weakened, these problems, like a disease, simply made themselves known, they simply started working. That is, your financial problems, they are like a disease, were always inside you, but you suddenly fell ill with this disease, that is, these problems came out and began to interfere with you, to live a normal life, because you lost control over yourself. You gave in or were not prepared for a certain scenario of events in your life and therefore got what you were supposed to get in such a case, that is, problems. Realize the fact that you are doing something wrong in your life, not someone else, but you. If someone else were doing something wrong, then it would be easier for you, because in that case the problems would not be yours, but the other person's. And if it is you who has problems with finances, then it is you who is doing something wrong, it is you who is making a mistake in something. And therefore you need to understand what exactly you are doing wrong and just stop doing it. This is for a start. And only then, you will need to learn how to do what you did wrong correctly and start doing it correctly. As you can see, these are quite primitive actions on your part, there is nothing complicated about them, but they are exactly what needs to be done in those cases when you start making mistakes, and because of these mistakes, you have problems. The problem is not the problem. The problem is your inability to solve it and your lack of understanding of it. This is what you need to deal with first. Everything is simple and clear with money. It just needs to be earned correctly and spent correctly and, if possible, multiplied correctly. Then there will be no problems with it. But if you have always had or unexpectedly had financial difficulties in your life, then you are either earning money incorrectly, or spending it incorrectly, or doing both incorrectly. That is, you are not doing it according to the laws of people, not according to the rules that people have come up with for money, and that is why your personal model of your personal economy does not work. And if it doesn't work, if your actions don't lead to anything good, then stop doing them. There is a saying, I don't remember, unfortunately, from which book I read it, but it goes something like this: if you feel like you're in deep, then stop digging. By this, I want to say that solving financial problems should begin, if we're talking about actions, by stopping the type of activity you are currently engaged in. Now, if you are currently doing something, if you live a certain way of life that you are used to, that suits you completely, but at the same time you are experiencing financial difficulties, that is, you began to experience them at a certain period of time, then you need to stop. You need to stop all your activities for a while in order to figure everything out. You need to figure out what the matter is, what is happening, what went wrong, or what has always gone wrong. You must fully understand the problem. Without fully understanding it, you will never solve it, and nothing is solved by itself. So, with your awareness of the fact that you are wrong about something and with your stopping the activity that does not bring you any results or even harms you, you should begin to solve the financial problems that have arisen in your life. After you have temporarily stopped what you consider to be the right activity, which has made you progress intensively and at the same time has been growing your financial problems, you should start analyzing the situation that has developed in your life. It does not matter what kind of financial problems you have encountered. It could be problems at your company, or at work, problems in the family, or other personal problems. If there is something wrong with your money, then you should analyze the situation that has developed in your life at the moment and which contributes to your financial problems. Determine the position you are in at the moment. What are its pros and cons? You have achieved a certain result in your life. Let's call this result success. I admit the possibility that you have something to be proud of in your life, that you are not a complete loser. Record this result, your success, draw a line under it. So, up to this very moment, up to the moment when your success gave way to failures and problems began to appear in your life, you did everything right. When everything worked out for you, you definitely adequately perceived information from the outside world, adequately analyzed it, adequately responded to it, made the right decisions and acted without errors. But then something went wrong, then your actions became less adequate to the circumstances, and therefore your expectations began to diverge from the actual results. Here lies the reason and at the same time the solution to your financial problems. It lies in those very first wrong steps of yours, having made which, you turned off the path that led you to your goal and went on to the wrong road, you got lost. In such situations, when success is replaced by failure or when normal life ceases to be normal, it is extremely important to start remembering and analyzing all your latest actions, decisions, affairs, plans, etc., which could have caused such unpleasant changes for you. In general, all your activities must be checked for errors. You see, very often a person does not notice that he is starting to play around, especially on the wave of success. You can easily succumb to emotions and start making one mistake after another, turning your success into failure. And it is especially easy to play around with money. Money has always been accompanied by strong emotions that most people experience when dealing with both big money and small ones. In one case, we are talking about positive emotions, in the other, about negative ones. And when emotions take hold of you, you stop thinking, which means you stop reacting rationally to any external stimuli. And all the results you receive from, in fact, already ill-considered, spontaneous actions. So the question arises, how to overcome financial difficulties if you do not see the reason for their occurrence? There is definitely no way on your own. You can only ask other people for help, or take control of your emotions. Money, well, besides the fact that it, like fish, loves silence, it also loves order, discipline, and prudence. Money itself was created for order in society, for the formation of its hierarchical structure, for constructive interaction between people. And therefore, if chaos arises in your life, if you lose control over yourself, over the situation, stop thinking and slide into emotional perception of information from the outside world, money ceases to obey you. You are the cause of those financial problems that exist, if any, in your life. It was you who lost control over your finances, over the situation, over your emotions, which led you to these problems. You need to bring everything back under your control. You need to look for mistakes in your actions and correct them. You need to become the master of the situation. Do not give power over yourself to other people, blaming them for your problems. You should have power, and therefore all responsibility for what is happening in your life also lies with you. Income and expenses should always be under your strict control, without which it is impossible to achieve any order in financial affairs in principle. All your money, no matter how much you have, is your servant, and if it does not obey you, then you are a bad commander, you do not command them well. So become stricter, increase discipline in your life, sort out all your affairs that have gotten out of your control, refuse unnecessary affairs, and bring the rest to mind. Act decisively. Most people, when various problems arise in their lives, prefer to take the path of least resistance and therefore sometimes make very simple decisions that lie on the surface. But very often these decisions do not so much relieve people of the problems that have arisen in their lives, as they aggravate them, as a result of which, emotions in the lives of such people become even greater. And these, as you understand, are negative emotions, having succumbed to the influence of which, it is generally impossible to properly understand something, at least on your own. Therefore, emotions should be put aside, they only hinder us, but the culprit of these or those problems of yours must be found. Problems do not fall from the sky, there is always someone behind them. Remember this, behind every problem there is someone's incompetence, that is, every problem has its founder, that is, a person. You and I can be told fairy tales on TV about suddenly appeared problems in the world economy or problems with the economy in a particular country, blurring with such generalizations the responsibility of specific individuals who allowed these problems to arise, and who are not able to solve them. If you have problems in the economy, then deal with those people because of whom these problems became possible. Find the individuals responsible for these problems in the economy and exert adequate influence on them so that they or other people can solve these problems. There can be no problems with anything in this life. Problems can only be with people who are not able to control something or who do something intentionally or stupidly wrong. From this position, turn your attention to your personal financial situation, and you will see that all roads lead to you, to your mistakes, to your incompetence, to your weaknesses and your other shortcomings. Something is clearly wrong with you if you have problems. But don't worry, we are not talking about irreversible consequences. Everyone makes mistakes, everyone faces problems in their lives, the cause of which can be not only the person himself, but also unfavorable external factors. And although there is no point in referring to circumstances, justifying your failures with them, it will not work to ignore them either, and there is no need to do so. If something or someone prevents us from living, we need to do something with this something or someone in order to change the situation in our life in the way we need. Therefore, we also need to take into account any circumstances, any external factors, and think about what to do with them, how to react to them. But any circumstances, any external factors, be it problems in the economy or any other problems that were provoked not by you, but by someone else, will never take into account our interests. Other people do not really owe you anything, so they will always act only in their own interests, often encroaching on your interests, and thereby interfering with you. That is, the outside world lives by its own laws, and does not care about an individual person. This world does not care about you. Every day, thousands of people die in this world and thousands of people are born, and therefore you are nothing more than one of many representatives of the human race, and no one cares about you, no one. Therefore, it does not matter at all how the world lives, what problems it has, what processes are happening in it that prevent you from living. You should think only about yourself and your actions, about the answer you will give to this or that question posed to you by life. That's it. Forget about the circumstances, forget about external factors, forget about bad and good people. Forget about the state, which does not care about you, and about your boss, for whom you are nothing more than an expendable material. Your boss does not care about you, for him you are a donkey on which he plows. And everyone else does not care about you either, for everyone else you are a resource from which they can get something. And if you are a businessman, then forget about your competitors who prevent you from living normally. They were, are and always will be, and they hate you as much as you hate them. There is no one else in this world for you, there is only you and your interests. Therefore, friends, pay attention to yourself and your handling of money. Find shortcomings in your calculations and your actions that you need to correct. Some of your actions are either completely wrong or ineffective, and therefore they either have no result, or they do, but they are negative. Perhaps you do not count your money, perhaps your income and expenses are beyond your control, perhaps you are not under your control or are not competent enough to solve complex problems in your life. In some of this lies the cause of your financial problems. Money loves to be counted, do not forget about this. If you do not count your money, then sooner or later you will face financial problems, which will be a natural result of your irresponsibility. Count everything that can be counted, all income and all expenses, take into account every penny that leaves you and ensure that your income constantly grows, at least a little bit. You see, this is work, your work with money. Because money cannot live on its own, it needs management, competent management. You must become a good manager, a good commander, for your money. If there is little of it, if there is not enough of it, then, first of all, you need to start very carefully and very competently managing your money, so as not to allow it to be spent senselessly, and only then should you think about the measures that you need to take to increase your income. Sometimes, friends, you have to do it the way you have to do it, the right way, and not the way you want to do it. If you are unable to curb your desires, if you are unable to say no to yourself and thus act wisely, then you will definitely have problems in life, and not only financial problems. Pay attention to the frequency of financial crises, global financial crises, during which, as a rule, to one degree or another, many people suffer. Some even commit suicide. Why do they happen? Why, in a world with so many brilliant economists, so many financial gurus, do such extremely unpleasant phenomena as crises still happen? They happen because our appetites are too insatiable, we are never satisfied, and for everyone, without exception. Yes, there are people who know when to stop, but there are few of them, while the rest have to be either limited, or they sooner or later come to certain negative results for them, to a broken trough, because of their greed. Greed has always ruined people, it ruins them today, so financial crises are nothing more than the price paid for greed, the price paid for greed on a global scale. No one wants to live within their means, everyone wants to have more, almost everyone, and when problems come to replace a greater result, a greater good, we manage to be surprised by them. Well, of course, if we are talking about a stupid person, then everything happens in his life by itself, by chance, for no apparent reason. So it turns out, at least for me, that without curbing our appetites, we will not be able to rid ourselves of financial problems, which often become the result of the thoughtlessness of certain decisions made by a person in his life in order to get a greater result. Greed will ruin many more, because while a person is unreasonable, he will make the same mistakes many, many times. However, if the reason for your financial problems is not so much greed as your financial illiteracy and lack of education, then the solution to these problems will lie in a slightly different plane. Which is obvious. If you do not know how to make money, if you earn it incorrectly, if you cannot support yourself and your family in principle, being a specialist in a certain field in which specialists are not valued, then how can you avoid financial problems? You will not avoid them, no way. Here is an example. My parents worked in factories all their lives. They toiled there from morning until night and always experienced certain difficulties with money. The question is, what was the reason? The state, the boss, the small salary? My parents referred to these reasons. In their opinion, all their problems were connected with the political situation in the country, while I guessed about other reasons connected specifically with the work of my parents. Well, tell me, when did we value a simple worker? Well, when? People working in factories and plants always lived modestly, always. Well, what's the point of studying for a profession that is obviously unprofitable for you, especially if there are other options and no one forbids you to use them? You have to understand that you can't go into the water and stay dry. You can't go to work for a low-paying job and hope that financial problems, which are inevitable in such cases, won't arise in your life. Go where there is money and learn to earn it there, then you will always have it. For example, it is more profitable to be an official in our time and in our country, I mean Russia, than a businessman. If you become an official, then you will have a wonderful opportunity to provide yourself with everything you need for years to come, and the higher you climb the ladder of power, the better and more satisfying your life will be. Do we see this? We do. But do we understand it? I don't know, to be honest. I don't know what the youth of our time understands, and what they don't understand. After all, if a young person goes to study to be a lawyer or an engineer, I don't know what plans he has for his life. Maybe he plans to get a good job, including abroad, where good specialists are valued. Maybe he has other ideas about his future, but the choice of each of us, what to do, must be justified by us. A healthy mind of a healthy person encourages him to choose what is better, just as a fish looks for where it is deeper, being in its right mind, so a person with a normal head looks for where it is better. And if you have chosen something unprofitable for yourself, after which you constantly do not have enough money to live, then what are you surprised about in this case? You dug a hole for yourself and lay down in it. Do not go where they will spit in your face, do not work in a low-paying job, do not study for professions that are not in demand in our society, do not make the wrong choice yourself, so that you do not suffer from it later. It's the same with business. If your business is barely breathing, if you constantly have financial difficulties and you are not able to cope with them, well then pay attention to your damn business, from the point of view of its profitability. If your business does not bring you anything, give it up, do something more profitable. Well, why torture yourself with unpromising activities? Look for other ways to make money. Well, your flowers are not selling anymore, then do Chinese slippers or socks. Do not be a can of tinned food, try to think in the present and the future. I had this twice in my life, when I saw that everything, my current type of activity has no prospects, I need to switch to something else. Once I had this with work, and another time, already with business. In both cases, the transition to new ways of making money was relatively painful for me, but this is out of habit. And now I understand that, firstly, changing my type of activity turned out to be a very useful procedure for me, and secondly, that it is not so difficult to do if you are not afraid and not lazy. Yes, when you come to a new field, you understand that there are completely different rules here, completely different players. You need to get used to everything, adapt to everything new and, if possible, adapt something to yourself. In general, adaptation to a new place does not pass painlessly, but if you need it, if your financial problems have already brought you to a critical situation, you need to decide on this step and change your life. The great power of intention has always allowed people to do the impossible, and the law of averages will sooner or later allow you to succeed in everything, even in what you are currently in. In addition, a person is such a creature that is able to get used to everything, so any difficulties in life associated with a change in activity are temporary, you can be sure of this. Change your life if you are not satisfied with your financial situation, give up your interests, do not wait for better times, in which your type of activity, your way of life, your interests, your business, will become honored and big money will start circling around them. For something to change, something needs to happen. Without necessity, nothing changes. No one will pay a teacher or a doctor or a machine operator a lot of money if there are people ready to do these jobs for pennies. So, as you can see, the problem we are considering has its own peculiarities. Someone can be very greedy and therefore always have little money, someone cannot earn a normal income at all due to illiteracy, and someone does not know how to properly manage their money and, regardless of their income, experiences constant problems with it. I understand that greed is a problem for someone whose salary is above average, but who is also up to his neck in debt and does not know what to do with his financial difficulties, because he does not understand the reason for their occurrence. Here everything is clear, greed does its job. But when a person working for a truly beggarly salary and saving on everything he can save on, tries to somehow make ends meet, tries to at least somehow understand his financial situation, a terrible situation, then in this case it is already necessary to pay attention to the mental abilities of this person. If you have nothing to do except your primitive job, you need to learn to do something else, something new and more profitable. There is no other way. And even if it is hard to change your job, lifestyle, change your interests, it is still necessary to do. As I said above, a person can get used to everything, so do not be afraid of change. It is necessary if it suggests itself. Sometimes you have to change your place of residence, when there is simply nothing to do in the old place, when the situation is such that you have to, as they say, get out. If you live in a place where there is no money at all, for example, in some remote village, in some small town where you can hardly earn anything, or in some problematic country, then you need to uproot yourself and migrate to where it is better. That is, again, you need to change something, if not your job, then your place of residence. This is a natural necessity. Well, if you fish where there is none, will you catch anything? You have to go to a fishing spot and fish there, that's obvious.